Okay. I think most people have dialed in now. Good morning, everybody. A very warm welcome to today's LEAF surgery, our first in 2024. My name is Will Sibley, and I'm really pleased to be introducing you to today's session. For people in the audience who haven't attended a LEAF surgery before, LEAF surgeries are monthly online webinars delivered by the LEAF team to keep in touch with our members and wider audiences too. And these sessions usually fall on the second Friday of every month from September to May. The focus of these sessions alternates around different themes that are relevant to food and farming, and we're joined by guest speakers for each of these sessions to talk about these topics. For today's surgery, we are focusing on farm business resilience with four brilliant farmers. They are Nick and Lucy Tyler of Kingsplay Farming, and Lucy and Nick manage a dairy, beef and arable farm in North Wiltshire, and Bryony Archie Graham of J&E Graham, who run their family arable farm in Essex growing cereals. So a huge, very warm welcome to you all. The four speakers are participating in the Resilient and Ready programme, which is a programme co-led by LEAF and Corteva Agriscience, and it's an immersive, action-packed 3-year programme of training, technical support, and mentoring to support farmers in their journey through this current agricultural transition and to build resilience. And like many in the audience will know, greater resilience, and you can kind of break that down into business resilience, nature and climate resilience, social resilience, is becoming more and more of a key part of what farming is today. So we've been really looking forward to hearing from farmers firsthand on what resilience means to them and what the journey looks like. And it's a really important topic to LEAF, and I know it will be important to a lot of you in the audience too. So the session will be chaired by our very own Claire Mike, Director of Business Development at Technical at LEAF, who will be giving a very quick update from the LEAF side before chatting with our speakers. So good morning to you, Claire, and a very warm welcome.
Good morning.
And then lastly, before I hand over, we really enjoy hearing from our audience too. It's good to see lots and lots of familiar faces and some new ones as well. So a big warm welcome. And we'd love to hear from you. So please do submit your questions to the panel via the chat function, which should be somewhere on your bottom right. And we've left a bit of time at the end for a Q&A. So that's that. Thank you. Sit back and relax and enjoy the discussion. And over to you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Will, and a huge warm welcome back to the LEAF surgery to you all. I hope you all had a pleasant festive period. Look, I want to spend as much time with our guests today as we possibly can, so I'm just going to give one quick reminder this morning, just for our upcoming LEAF annual conference. It's going to be on Thursday, the 1st of February, at BNP Paribas UK headquarters in London. And the theme for the day is Pathways to Sustainability, Scaling the Transition to Global Agriculture. And yeah, I think that's really quite pertinent in terms of what we're going to talk about today. So that's really very exciting. There is a huge range of speakers and panelists joining us for the annual conference, not least Jacqueline McGlade, Professor of Sustainable Development and Knowledge Systems at the University College London, and a great many more. Please do go and take a look on our website to get more information about that and to book your space. So without any further ado, let's crack on to having a chat with our wonderful cohort 2 of Resilient and Ready farmers. And look, this has got such a special place in my heart, the Resilient and Ready programme. We started building it a few years ago and had 4 farmers on cohort number 1 who we have such a wonderful relationship with now, and we are just delighted to be working with Nick and Lucy and with Bryony and Archie now on the second phase of Resilient and Ready. So a huge warm welcome to you all. I'm going to start with a really easy question for all of you, if that's okay. So Nick and Lucy, if I could start with you first. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourselves, about your farm and your business, maybe a little bit about your plans and ambitions? Thank you.
Certainly, yeah. Nice to see everybody on the webinar. So thank you for inviting us, Claire and Will. So yeah, we've been farming in Headington now as a family since 1934. So I'm 3rd generation, and yeah, we've been. Over the years, my grandfather took a tenancy on, then my father came home and bought some land and built another dairy, and we sort of gradually built the business up over the last 90 years. I came back from college when I was 21, full of enthusiasm to try and push the dairy business forward. And now I'm 48, that was a few years ago. We built a greenfield site unit in 2004, and we pushed the production on the cows. We had a big countryside stewardship scheme on the Triple SI land, and we were looking to bring the whole thing together really with the arable, the beef, the dairy, the stewardship, and we wanted to push the whole business forward in a positive way. So
and so we really sort of got interested in the sustainability side. Probably it was 2021. We've got an aligned milk contract, and part of that contract is being RSPCA farm assured. So from an animal health and welfare point of view, we were doing what we deemed to be the best we possibly could. So we started looking at what different farm assurance schemes were available from a farming sustainably point of view, and we stumbled up on LEAF really. We completed our first LSFR in early 22, and then set ourselves possibly a bit of a mad target of becoming LEAF Mark certified by the end of that year, which we just managed with the audit taking place on the 19th of December. So it was very tight, but we were chuffed to get it. And then through all the work that we were doing with the LEAF Mark and the LSFR, we became aware of the nature-based solutions to climate change. Met Will, really enjoyed that project. The thing that we've always found with LEAF is just the enthusiasm from everyone involved with LEAF. It's really infectious, and it made us want to work with LEAF more, which is how we then ended up sort of on Resilient and Ready, or applying for Resilient and Ready, which we're really excited about.
That's brilliant, thank you. And wow, it's just lovely to hear that yeah, you wanted to be part of the LEAF family too, so thank you so much. Bryony and Archie, can I ask you the same question please? We'd be lovely to know a little bit about yourselves and your farm, and again a little bit about what you're thinking for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll have to forgive me because I tend to talk over my lovely brother, who tends to sit here very quietly. So sorry in advance for that. A classic big sister moment. So we are a 300-hectare arable farm in Essex. We farmed here. We're the fourth generation of the family to be farming here, and I use that term loosely because despite our dad's best efforts to make us do things other than farming, we have ended up back here regardless. So yeah, so we're the fourth generation. Dad still very much manages the farm, but the business is in a transition period where Archie and I are moving back towards the farming side of the business, having done other things for a while. So I came back to the business in 2018 and set up a diversified income stream, and we run weddings and events here, and we now do 60 weddings a year. Archie came back in about 2020 and helped run that with me, and we now work on that side together full time. We've now got a team in place so that we can hopefully start to move the management of the diversified side of the business sideways and take on more with the farm, which is, I think, what motivates us most. So Dad's been a member of LEAF for a long time and always farmed to the principles of integrated farm management as far as time and resource allows. So it's something we were always aware of, and the environment and sustainability has always been hugely important to how we run all sides of the business. And so we became aware of the Resilient and Ready programme around the same time. We were both thinking we would move back towards the farming side of the business more. And it just felt like a really good opportunity to source as much information as we could to try and help us along that journey. And I think in the last 12 months, you sort of think you know a bit about farming because you've grown up in that environment, and that is very different to actually being involved on the ground. So I think really, I feel like I've taken 5 steps back because it's so vast. But the information and the resources and the expertise that we have access to as part of the programme has just been critical for the past 12 months.
yeah, the people we've met through Resilient and Ready is fantastic. It's been anything.
So yeah, that's us.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much. And I think that's so honest of you and true that the journey isn't always straightforward. It isn't just always ploughing ahead. Sometimes you might take a couple of steps back, but that's okay because that's part of it and part of the richness of that journey. Bryony, you so brilliantly set me up there. Thank you very much for introducing the concept of integrated farm management. I'd love to explore that a little bit more now with Lucy and Nick, if that's okay. So can I ask you how an integrated farm management approach has helped you on your journey over the last few years? Has it changed your view at all of your farm or your business?
It definitely has. I think it helped us to look at our business as a whole. And I think the thing that we've learned is that if we're going to manage to farm sustainably and successfully, we need to find some way of smartly integrating the different sides of our business, which is what we're sort of looking at ways of now. And I think it's also put less of an emphasis on the dairy and made us realise that the beef and arable are also really important parts.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, the dairy's 60-70% of the turnover. It's been the main driver behind the business. But that doesn't mean to say it's where all the focus should be, because there's so much more we could do with the arable and the beef. And the other thing with the integrated farm management approach, we, as managers or farm operators or owners, we're all very conscious of the invoices and the bills and the financial side of it. And we all sort of know where our electric bill is. But what we don't always necessarily do, and we're not always that good at, is challenging those bills. And just the whole integrated farm management approach we did with LEAF, it made us go through the energy audit. We looked at every single thing we plugged in. We looked at everything that water was going into. And by spending the time and the effort in doing so, it's given us so many more options and reduced some of our costs, as well as doing everything better for the environment going forward. So there's lots of bits to it. Initially, you think, oh my goodness, how am I going to do that? How's that going to work? But then when you get into it, you actually see the benefits.
Thank you. That's just brilliant insight. Bryony Archie, can I ask you, so obviously your business is on a transition at the moment, and it would be great to share how that integrated farm management approach has helped your thinking in that kind of transitional period. Is there anything new that you might have adopted as you've got to learn to work with an integrated farm management approach to help you?
I think it's helped sort of give a new, if I say lease of life, that sounds wrong, like it was not there before. But I think I don't think we can ignore the fact it's a really, really hard time to be a farmer at the moment. And I appreciate this is cyclical and we are not experienced enough to have seen it before, whereas there are many farmers who've seen these dips and troughs before. So I appreciate that. But it's made us have conversations over the last 12 months that have kind of put context to that. So the things that Dad's always done, the way he's always farmed, he's always instilled an ethos of responsibility in us. So you have to take responsibility for your actions. You need to take responsibility for the environment that we manage, whether it's owned or tenanted, and we have both. And how you do that within the restraints of what you can do with the resources you have available requires an awful lot of knowledge and skill. So I think for us, it's about learning from what Dad's done in the past and what's worked and what will and won't work given the current challenges we have financially, politically, and with the climate. So I think it's been a real window into what does this mean, and also what our skill sets are. So we've learned a lot, I think, over the last 12 months about where our own interests lie, and that's different. A little overwhelming. But Archie's more practical than me, so he can operate the machines in a way I can't, and I hate the gender bias that comes with that, but thus is life. Whereas
there's an awful lot that Brian can do with it.
And whereas I prefer, I'm a scientist by training, and I love the agronomy and I like the crop science, and I'm really passionate about that. So I think the last 12 months have made us look at all the different components of integrated farm management and almost pick the bits that we hope to take responsibility for within our own farm moving forward.
Oh, that's brilliant. And can I just say what sweet siblings you are? I wish I got on with my siblings as well as you get on with yours.
Yeah, we're only like this when we're being.
Yeah, we're on camera. Yeah,
it's on show. Brilliant. Thank you for that. That walk through how you work with integrated farm management was really helpful. Thank you. So the programme is called Resilient and Ready. And just a very quick shout out. I know that we've got some of our Corteva Agriscience colleagues on the call. So hi to Caroline and Sally. And we've also got one of our one of our cohort 1 farmers on the call as well. So that's really great to have a big Resilient and Ready representation here today. Thank you all. Yeah, it's called Resilient and Ready. So I'd love to know how do you interpret resilience? What does resilience mean to you? Nick and Lucy, if I could come to you first, please. Oh, you're just on mute, sorry.
Sorry, not sure what happened there. I think for me, and I think for Nick as well, it's an ability to be able to adapt in order to survive and thrive. That would be how I'd certainly view it. Would you agree?
Definitely. I think it's challenging what we're doing and seeing whether what we're doing is the right way, not just for the business, but for the environment going forward. And there's so much, the one thing I always say is, when I went to college 30 years ago studying farm management, you could put a line through that syllabus now, because it's, apart from a partial budget or a gross margin, it's completely different. And even the last 5 years, it's changed enormously. And to become more resilient, you need to be more educated. You need to be doing CPD. You need to be reading the press. You need to be watching webinars. You need to be on the ball so much and be open to change and open to learning.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. So eloquently put. Can I ask the same, Bryony and Archie, of yourselves? How do you, what does resilience mean to you?
I think it's being realistic is what it is to me. You can't, we don't have the benefit of that length of experience in the industry. But I think what personally I've seen over the last 5 years is the biggest thing that Dad has done is just not say no. He doesn't put his head in the sand. I think there's an element in farming where you have to kind of take each year on its comes, and you go one season, one harvest. Is that an anomaly, or in arable, obviously, or is this a pattern? And in the last 5 years, we've had too many years of going, oh, well, it's just a bad year. It's a bad year. No, this is just climate now, and you can't ignore that. So the resilience comes from not just putting your head down and going, this is what I do this every year, this is what I do, and eventually it will work, because I don't think that is the case anymore, as Nick was saying. So it's about being practical and real and not putting your head in the sand, and appreciating that you have to broaden your horizons. And then financial resilience is so important. Like there are so many things you could do, and there are so many approaches you can take, and there are so many different strategies you could implement to try and give your business resilience, but you have to be able to bankroll it. And at the moment, unless you can speak RPA, which is a special kind of chaos, then that's actually very hard from our perspective. We're not a big enough business to exist without support from the RPA. And unless you can find your way into those very complicated bureaucratic nightmares, then it's hard. So yeah, I think you have to be practical and realistic about what resilience can mean, as well as what it could mean.
Thank you, Bryony. That's just great advice. And, Caroline used to have a saying, you can't be green if you're in the red. And I think that economic resilience just is so critical. And it's brilliant that you are considering the full diversity of your income stream. So you've got your farm diversification, you host events already, you've touched on their RPA. I've kind of witnessed some of the kind of exchanges of the wonderful thing about Resilient and Ready is we have these WhatsApp groups where we can, the farms just feed off each other constantly. And I've never witnessed a WhatsApp group quite like yours, guys. It's just been wonderful to witness the collaboration, the consultation, the sharing of the ups and downs, the photos, the animals, everything has just been a wonderful. And I wish the whole audience could also witness what I get to see so often. And thank you for that. It enriches my life for sure. I can see, obviously you've been going on a journey with SFI, Bryony, and looking at applications there. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just think it's really helpful to know that everybody's going on that journey and is in that transition at the moment. And look, it can seem quite daunting and challenging, but actually that peer-to-peer support, the way that you kind of put your, you take, write something about your experience of trying to do it that day or what have you. Do you find, so a quick additional question before we move on, do you both find that actually that support, that peer-to-peer support through the Resilient and Ready programme has been helpful? Bryony, maybe start with you and then we'll move over to the Tylers.
Absolutely. And I appreciate it's hard, to be honest. There aren't many industries where you sit down with another business and go, so how much money have you made this year? And what have you just don't do that. So, but then at the same time, the challenges are so unique to farming, and the kind of honesty of going, it's not rosy for everyone. Obviously there's a spectrum and all businesses are structured differently, but yeah, just being able to say, this is really hard. actually, really hard sometimes. And to kind of, there's so many opportunities and there's so much you could access, but I guess I keep coming back to the realism, just because I think in the last 12 months we've gone from that, oh, we could do this and we could do that and we could do this, and then you kind of have to rein it in, whilst our dad nods sagely in the background and going, yeah, I told you so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just being realistic, really.
Oh, thank you so much. And the Tyler's, do you find that kind of you know, the being able to exchange your frustrations and your celebrations with another farm, do you find that a really helpful part of the programme too?
Definitely. And I think that the first time we met Bryony and Archie, they were just such lovely people, and we're just so grateful to be working with them as the other farm on Resilient and Ready. We love spending time with them. It's been great to visit them. We've loved having them come visit us. So yeah, it's all been such a positive experience for us.
I say it's the open and honesty. That's the thing that really works. And we might be, you know, we're all in the same industry, and a lot of businesses, if you're in the same industry, you're competing, but we're not competing. We're working together, and we're trying to be a team, to get together and be better for the future, for everything.
And for us, it's the experience as well. You know, Nick and Lucy, I completely agree. Like, it's wonderful. I would say we get on really well, and it's so nice. It isn't competitive and it is purely supportive. And we've realised we are new entrants. We're a fourth generation of a farming family, but we are not farmers. We're not trained farmers. We didn't grow up working on the farm. We grew up here physically, but that's completely different. So learning from people and different fields of expertise, and also about livestock, which we're desperate for, and Lucy keeps saying is doable, and that blows my tiny mind. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's so supportive and brilliant.
Just one more thing I'd like to add, if that's all right, Claire. I think what's really good as well is like Bryony has come from a scientific background. Are a vet, so she's come from a scientific non-farming background, and I think bringing those people together into existing businesses that Archie and myself are operating and running, it brings a different insight to the way we do things. So it brings another mind, another insight, another set of intelligence as well. So another skill set. So it's great.
Thank you. What a wonderful summary from you both. Brilliant. Well, that segues wonderfully into perhaps the next couple of questions then. Bryony and Archie, if I go with you first, I'd love to know, can you give us an example of some of the biggest challenges that you faced in the short time that you've come back onto the farm and started working on it? And I'd also love to know one of your favourite achievements as well over the last few months.
Oh, where do we start with the challenges?
Yeah,
well,
I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends which side of the business you want to talk about. I mean, in terms of the farm, I would say, the climate is by far the biggest challenge. As Bryony was saying, we started seeing these abnormally wet, seasons, like 5 years ago. When they first started, we kind of started taking them as they came and thought, I don't know, we'll see what happens next season. And it's just got to the point where we realised this is just how it is now, it seems. We've had 5 years on the trot of it, of not only abnormally huge amounts of rain, but also completely unmoderated. You know, they come in huge swaths of 3 months of non-stop rain and then 3 months of droughts, and it's just not, trying to farm in that is just not practical or feasible. We've also got, in terms of diversification, we've started the venue here, as Bryony said, and literally 2 years in, that's when the pandemic hit. So that was our biggest challenge on the diversification side. But in terms of that, we've managed to, in terms of the resilience of things, we've managed to kind of overcome that. And the team we've got on the venue now has allowed Bryony and I to take a step back at long last, after the venue's been on life support for God knows how many years, which for a while pulled us away from the farm. But at long last, we've finally been able to take a step back towards the farm, take a step away from the venue, focus on the farm again. And that is you know, it's nice to finally be at that point where we can trust our venue staff to take care of the venue whilst Brian and I focus on the farm a bit more.
Brilliant, thank you. And yes, so yes, I suppose the celebration is built into that, in that you've managed to be able to refocus. Any other celebrations over the last few months?
I think so renewable energy sources, I think it's a huge win for us. Dad had his eye on biomass for a long time. And I think high carbon capture crops are a potential future for us, and we're on heavy clay. Arable is hard. There is some good parts of the farm that are probably worth pursuing from an arable perspective, but there are some fields that just won't work if we get these long periods of rain. So we had a biomass boiler put in it was commissioned in 2017, and we've now got 15 hectares of willow. We're planting another 6 hectares this year, and that's been great. That feels like the fruition of a lot of many years of thought and planning, and finally accessing the right funding and finding the right contractors and consultants to work with, and it's worked really well. And we're really excited about it, and it feels really positive for the environment. The next block of planting we're going to do in such a way that we're going to prioritise biodiversity, plant some native species as well as the non-native fast-growing ones, and that, I think, feels like coming out of the phase of going, oh god, what are we doing, to actually feeling like we're moving forward and doing things that we've been talking about doing for a really long time, and it's working really well, and that feels really positive. So yeah, that's an achievement.
Thank you, that's wonderful. And Tyler, so could you name us a challenge that you've had to face into, and but also a celebration would be great too?
I think for us, probably labour's our greatest challenge, finding sort of reliable members of staff. We're very lucky that we've got a really good team, and without our team, our business would be nothing. But I think so, I guess, and we're kind of viewing it at doing our bit to try and change these sort of negative preconceptions that the public have about working in the farming industry and about farming in general. So we've been putting a lot of time and effort into school visits, Open Farm Sunday and things like that, in the hope that we can try and get the next generation coming into farming. But labour would definitely be, and I see it as an ongoing challenge.
It was a bit yesterday, as a bit of an aside, we were at our youngest potential new school when he moves next year, and I looked through the prospectus and it was showing all the children that moved on last year and where they went to university, and out of 100 children there was only 2 that went to agriculture, but I say agriculture fairly lightly, it was land management. So I think that's really important. But the other couple of things I think from my side of it would be, firstly, the massive inflation and deflation we had in the cost of products and value of products over the last 2 years. That created a lot of financial stress, if you like, with paying bills, getting money in and making it work, and hedging bets. We were running a hedging business, not a farming business, and to try and make things work. So that was a challenge, which seems to be settling a bit. But as I'd echo what Archie said, you know, the weather has just been a challenge, and we have all these wonderful cropping plans, we have all these wonderful intentions, and then the weather lets you down and you change it. And to give you an idea, nearly 40% of our maize this year we couldn't forage as planned, and we ended up combining. We finished harvest on the 23rd of December this year, which was just ridiculous. And you know, we had full intentions of getting that maize off, obviously for the dairy cows, and then putting cover crops in, ready for a spring barley crop the year after. But certain things have to go out the window, and you've got to be flexible. And I guess it comes back to the word resilient again. It's having a backup plan so that when things do go sideways, you can manage it.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. And a celebration before we move on.
One thing I've loved, and we touched on the Wagyu thing. So 4 or 5 years ago, I bought some Wagyu semen because I love the barbecuing and grilling, and we saw the excitement of the American sites when they were enjoying this quality beef, and we gradually built the numbers up. And the excitement, I think, of such a small part of our business when you can produce something that's so good, and we got some contracts with some farm shops and butchers, those kind of things give you a celebration as well, I think.
They do, and I think as well, when you feel like you're doing the right thing in your
Absolutely.
business with the animal health and welfare and the sustainability, you feel good when you're doing when you're doing it right.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Brilliant. I'm just going to touch on community engagement because you've both brought it up and I just wanted to kind of hover on there for a second. So obviously, Bryony and Archie, you've got the venue, and Lucy and Nick, you mentioned there a little bit about school visits, and hosting Open Farm Sunday. Just very quickly, it'd be lovely to know, how important is community engagement to your business, but perhaps more from your perspective for the industry, how important is community engagement? Lucy and Nick, if I could come to you first, that would be great. Thanks.
I think it's absolutely essential, Claire. I'm really passionate about school visits. We've recently secured some funding from FIPL, who've been absolutely amazing. So we've got a trailer coming for school visits, and we've formed a link with one and hopefully soon 2 local schools. So we're going to have every year from these junior schools coming out once a year to come and visit the farm, so we can talk to them and link it to the curriculum. And I think if we can show them the opportunities in farming, then we can sort of change the view of farming that some of the public have, and hopefully promote it as something really positive.
Yeah, that's great news. And yeah, I do encourage any farmers on the call today to go and check out what the opportunities might be for FIPL funding if you're interested in community events and outreach and education and things like that. Bryony and Archie, what's your perspective on community engagement?
Well, I think Archie does a lot of it already. We do tractor trailer rides for wedding guests, and that is a special type of communication that involves usually quite a lot of alcohol. So that cuts all ways.
The groomsmen singing all the also.
Yeah. Very patient, but no, we're really passionate about it as well. I think that Lucy and Nick are really brave, because livestock's a different level of welfare and misinformation, and that beef documentary just highlights, doesn't it, how risky it is and how precarious it is, but then also highlights, farmers are the ones that have the voice. We are the people that do the growing or do the food, the production, and we're responsible for it, and that's the trusted voice. We're the people that should be telling people how we farm and why it's safe, and why it's so much better than in other parts of the world, and why it's worth it. Our equivalent on the arable side, we're not organic, so there are neighbours that lock away their children when the sprayer comes out, and that is pure misinformation. And we have a responsibility to make sure that people who are interested, obviously, or do what we can. My favourite phrase is accidental learning. Any opportunity I get. And Clarkson's farm, I hate the man, but it's a mouthpiece. People come here for events and go, "Oh, have you watched Clarkson's farm? Is it true?" And I'm like, it's actually not bad. It's a pretty realistic representation of a lot of the challenges that farmers face, and that gives you an opportunity to have a conversation that isn't about Love Island, which is great. So
Sunday as well has been great as well, through Resilient and Ready, and re-establishing our link with LEAF. We did our first Open Farm Sunday last year, which was the perfect platform to kind of educate people, basically.
Yeah, really
it was brilliant, because we're quite, well, not unusual here, but we're in a situation where because we're so close to London, we're quite a small oasis of greenery surrounded by a lot of towns and cities, and there are a lot of primarily children, who grow up in a lot of urban areas, and if we didn't do things like Open Farm Sunday, they would never have the opportunity to experience rural life. So we have the facilities to do that, especially with the venue as well. We have facilities to host people. So yeah, it's great to be able to have the platform to let people in, open our gates, and sort of re-educate people.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Bryony, that was wonderful. A trusted voice, I think, is just such a great takeaway from how you shared there. Farmers being a trusted voice, and it's not about preaching, it's about sharing, which is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. So let's just round up on one final question for me, and then I would love to encourage the audience to share. 1 year on into Resilient and Ready, what are your takeaways so far? What have you really enjoyed? What have you got the most out of as well? Would be lovely to know.
Do you want us to kick off, Claire?
Sorry, yes, let's pick. Sorry, yes, the Tylers would be great. Thank you.
I think what I've got out of it is sort of really embracing every opportunity that we've been given on the programme. We get to meet so many interesting people. You've got the experts, but also resilient and ready farmers from the previous round, which we had a visit the Yattendon estates, and it was amazing to listen to what they've achieved. So yeah, I think that would be, for me, just taking all those opportunities.
And I think it's important to understand that it is a marathon and not a sprint, and it's not like some of the other audits that we do on the farm. It's the whole approach is of sustainable farming is it's continuous improvement. It takes time, and there's little things that you can do each year that keep pushing you up the ladder, and you see the reward from it. And you know, daft things like we put some more owl boxes up, and we got a barn owl up in one of the sheds on the hill that we've never had in there before, and it just, that's what fills you with life and vigor and enthusiasm to keep moving forward.
And I think even if you're just taking small steps, as long as those steps are in the right direction, then you're achieving something. So yeah. I think don't feel overwhelmed by sustainable farming. It can seem like you've got to be perfect from day one, and that's not the case. You just have to move in the right direction and do what you can at this point in time.
Thank you. Bryony and Archie?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Lucy and Nick just said. I think it provides a really structured framework to move forward within for us, because we're learning still. I guess everyone's always learning, but we're starting from square one. It feels it gives a really good framework and structure to work within. And I think our ambition really at the moment is to just make sure we don't stop producing food. It feels like a lot is stacking against a lot of farms our size to push us the other way. And we need to completely revisit how we approach that because of the way politics and economics and the climate are at the moment. But that's our ambition, and to do it in a way which is sustainable economically as well as environmentally. And we have to take responsibility in that regard. Now I've got 2 kids, and I don't think you can look at the future and look at the current climate crisis and look at my children and think they're going to grow up with this. We have to do something. I feel really passionately about that. So we have to find a way to farm and produce food, and that's critical, and we mustn't forget it. The environment is also absolutely important, but those 2 things have to work together, and I think we have a huge responsibility to do that. And the principles of integrated farm management really provide that framework, and it helps. The structure really helps.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Right. Well, enough from me. I'm going to hand back to Will now, who's got a couple of questions that have been lining up. So that's wonderful. And we've got another one there from Oliver as well. So Will, I'm going to hand back to you. But just to say to Bryony and Archie, to Lucy and to Nick, thank you so much. That's been such a pleasure. And it's just wonderful hearing your stories. And I hope the audience has enjoyed that too. So Will, back over to you.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you, echoing what Claire just said. Thank you so much, Bryony, Archie and Lucy and Nick. I know you really well at this stage, but the more and more I hear you guys speak, the more better it gets. So thank you. We've got a couple of questions and not much time, but 2 that sort of relate to each other. We've got one of what are you planning going forward beyond the Resilient and Ready project? And then also we've got a question of what do you think your farms will look like in 10 years time? So quite big questions there, and looking ahead. But Lucy and Nick, I hope you're comfortable going first on those questions.
Certainly. So our milk contract, we're lucky the supermarket we supply is very positive on carbon, and we got great opportunities over the next year or 2 looking at carbon neutral fertilizer, looking at Bovea feed additives to reduce methane emissions. And my ambition going forward, and I think Lucy's as well, is if we can challenge our carbon footprint even further. We've been footprinting for a few years now, and although we're quite a relatively large business with over 1,000 head of bovines running around, we're still in a good position, and we can really smash that. We can, I hope, bring our footprint down way lower to a point that hopefully the country will realise that bovines aren't that bad if you manage them properly and you look after them and you feed them properly. And once we can start accurately monitoring the amount of feed that we can produce ourselves and putting a number to that in our footprint score as well, then all those things will just give evidence to the fact that British agriculture is actually really strong, really good, and really positive for the environment. So that would be my ambition going forward.
I'd agree completely with that.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. You know, carbon neutrality around all sectors in farming is, yeah, huge ambition. I think that will resonate with a lot in the audience there. So thank you very much for that one. And Bryony and Archie, where do you see yourselves 10 years' time?
Oh, old. So I think key objective is to tie the two sides of the business together as far as we can. So we've got plans to hopefully plant an orchard at some point. So that ties in with carbon neutrality, obviously, and biomass and carbon sequestration. But also then the harvest from that would produce apple juice and cider, which we'd sell in the venue and tie everything together. We'd like to have bees and honey, and again, we'd sell that as wedding favours and tie everything together. And I think long term, I'd really like to go back to a mixed farming system, which I think would probably tip my dad over the edge. But we could go on about regenerative farming, that's a whole other topic. But I think it's quite interesting that really what we're doing is going back to the way our grandfather farmed, and realizing that they might have not had the science to back it up, but it worked, and there's a reason for that, and it's good for a lot of reasons. So I think, yeah, our post-resilient and ready goals are probably in the sort of medium term, the orchard and the honey and maybe some soft fruit, those kind of things, and using marginal land for things other than arable. And then in the long term, making sure that we do still use the land that's good for arable and food production, but possibly in a mixed system. And using all those things, as Nick and Lucy were saying, to make the business as environmentally sensitive and sustainable within itself as possible.
Brilliant, that's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, again, you know, diversification, you've mentioned that, but it's diversification in your crops, in your land, how you use that across the board. So great, thank you very much. Again, going to resonate with a lot in the audience. We have time very quickly for one more. We've touched on SFI, and you know, there's been recent announcements, and just to hear your thought on these. You know, are you excited about these new announcements? Are they important to you? Maybe Bryony, could we go first with you, please?
Do you want my view as someone who's recently gone through the pain of trying to apply, or do you want my view as someone who enjoys the fact they've increased the rates? I think. Okay, so we had a mid-countryside stewardship agreement, which was ended at the end of 2022. And then we had the higher tier that kicked off on the 1st of January 23. That was an absolute bureaucratic nightmare. And the SFI is also a bureaucratic nightmare, but it is less of a bureaucratic nightmare from our experience than the countryside stewardship. So in that sense, I think it's positive. I also appreciate that without any sort of financial incentive to change the way you farm and to farm in a more environmentally sensitive way, no one's going to do it. So I completely agree with all of those things. I do think the bureaucracy is painful, but unnecessary, but it's great that they've introduced the rates and they're clearly broadening the offering, and I do think that there is a farmer voice there now. That's the impression I get. The changes that they are making suggest that farmers have been talking to DEFRA and they have listened to an extent. Obviously it can be improved, but yes, it's definitely a step forward. I'm hoping that our application will be accepted soon and we can have a bit more real world benefit from it. It does still feel a little bit like a promise at the moment from our perspective, I have to say, but just maybe that's just teething problems. But I feel like it's moving in the right direction.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, in your view, long way to go, but there's a lot of positive out of it, and you know, bring the farmer voice in. And on that note, you know, I think this whole session has been brilliant opportunity to hear from farmers firsthand on the journey, and just the power of these stories that you're sharing is really effective. So thank you very much. We'll leave it there. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to Claire, and thank you so much for our audience for being here. We'll see you next time. Hopefully, our next surgery is February the 9th And please do look out for the email from Claire.
One of the many that
Thank
you will get. Thank you so much to the Tylers and to the Grahams. It's just been such a wonderful walk through, what a journey through Resilient and Ready and your experiences. So thank you. And thank you again to Corteva Agriscience for helping us to do this. And I hope that you listen and realise what a great impact you're having. Yeah, just a couple of shout outs. We've got Nick, one of the first cohorts, and we've also got Alice on the call as well. So there's a huge contingent of Resilient and Ready here today. So welcome to you all, and just thank you for joining. Have a nice weekend, everybody, and we'll see you all at the next Leaf Surgery.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will.